School did not make me value education. School made me value grades. We're taught in school, you can't say I, you can't say me. No, you're taught all these things of removing yourself from the data. Why are we constantly being pushed out of the data? Because there is a Western approach which says, I can't be inside of the data, otherwise it's not professional enough, it's not strong enough, it's not good enough.
Do you feel that there's something wrong with the education system now?
Education was about the soul. Sharing education through storytelling or the oral storytelling tradition to help to develop the listener. It wasn't just about let me see your statistics and let me see your results on a test. It was actually about soul refinement and the development of the student.
So good to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for the interview. I think it's going to be a really good conversation.
For those who don't know who you are, do you want to just give like maybe a brief intro? Who are you? What do you do, etc.?
Thank you so much. Yes, so my name is Nia-Cerise, and I am really passionate about education, advocacy, justice, and also representation for women. I have a women's network which supports women between the intersect of business and faith, supporting them on how to navigate the 7 mountains of influence of society, include family, faith, business, technology, government, education, and media. And I've also been somebody who really wants to see reform in the educational sphere. I did my undergraduate at Warwick, and in the midst of some really difficult trials of my education, I somehow managed to get the research prize. But that degree sparked my love for education because I did a interdisciplinary module, which caused me to literally fall in love with what education was, what it could actually look like and challenge what I've always seen it to be. And this opened the chapter for me to go to Cambridge and just really work on how we could dismantle what education looks like, especially from a European perspective. And we could give some more access and also different, like, I would say pedagogy and like methodology to research on what that could do and how I could add to the scholarship in my own way and also in ways that were not necessarily like the traditional clinical approaches that were more so, you know, Eurocentric and intrinsically white. And I don't mean white in the sense of a skin color. I mean, I'm talking about whiteness in the sense of an institution and a system. So I was really, really passionate about my degree when I did that. And I'm just here continuing on, interested in seeing other people thrive in their education and how I can, you know, contribute my own way as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that intro. And my first question actually came from something that you said. So Nia-Cerise just said about dismantling education. So I want you to just touch on, do you feel that there's something wrong with the education system now? Do you feel like there's something that we could change within the education system? Before we get into your story, I think it'll be so good to just get your thoughts on that.
Education was inherently created to refine the soul. If you look at scholars of old and those who were, you know, the founding fathers and all of those who really like were passionate about education and where it came from, education was about the soul. Education, even according to, let's say, African culture, was actually a soul refiner. Sharing education through storytelling or the oral storytelling tradition and different things like this to do what? To help to develop the listener. It wasn't just about me see your statistics and let me see your results on a test. It was actually about soul refinement and the development of the student. This was so important for East Asian traditions as well as African traditions. And even with all of the Western world as well, this was how it began. When education was introduced in the Western world, it was rooted in Christianity, and it was all about the refinement of the soul to be a better contributor to society and to also draw the soul closer to God. However, as time has gone on, as things have developed throughout centuries, education has more so been about how we can measure somebody's, IQ or, competition or test results. And it has really fallen far away from what it was essentially meant to contribute to the life of an individual. Who dominates the narrative? Who creates the curriculum? Who contributes to the scholarship? Racism has bled into education, where you find that even the lecturers in the United Kingdom, there's less than, I think, 3 Black lecturers in the whole of the United Kingdom. You have people challenging curriculum. Whilst I was at university, I was on a board which was called Why is My Curriculum White? And we were looking into this, investigating why is it that we do not have a multicultural curriculum where there are scholars, lecturers, you name it, who are actively from different. It's why, because the people leading the course don't look like me. They don't look like you. They are Europeans who don't necessarily read authors or people who look like us and have written and contributed to the canon of work. So I have seen through education, number one, how it has become intrinsically racist. Education for me is not just a hobby, it's actually a form of activism. And so with me and my education, the way that I contribute to activism is by remembering and naming academics, Black female academics who have come before me. And secondly, is by me not conforming to Eurocentric ways that data and research can be presented. And that looked like in my dissertation, I decided I was going to present my dissertation through an array of different methods. That was like me using prayer as data, dreams as data. This was me literally using poetry, using all forms of creative means to actually showcase my tradition through my ancestry, which was actually song and storytelling as a real important and necessary part of research and data presentation. And so for me, actually pushing back against clinical approaches, we're taught in school, you can't say I, right? Yeah. You're taught, you can't say me. No, you're taught all these things of removing yourself from the data. And then I began to challenge and ask myself, why are we constantly being pushed out of the data? Because there is a Western approach which says that I can't be inside of the data, otherwise it's not professional enough, it's not strong enough, it's not good enough. However, in my culture and in our ancestral traditions, actually, what I saw was putting individuals in the data was actually a necessary and mandatory part of learning. And so I really just pushed away from all of the frameworks that are given to students and said, yeah, this is how you do it. And we're not given any other frameworks, any other ideas. And my research ended up being the highest graded in Cambridge, and my methodologies were circulated at university to show people your data doesn't need to just be presented through numbers. And I battled this growing up, Danielle. I did. But growing up, I battled with being told humanities is weaker, sciences are more academic. 100%. And it was made as though if you're not doing chemistry, physics, engineering, technology, you are not smart. You are not, you don't have a brain. I went to a grammar school. So everything humanities was looked down upon, and it was a fight of my life to almost prove myself. And ultimately, when I was doing my dissertation, I was like, this would be a disservice for me to say that I want to dismantle racism within education and stick to the same methodologies that imprison me and keep me doing the exact same replica of what has been done year in, year out, set by white people who made the frameworks for what is correct research and what is incorrect research. And I believe it was, Maya Angelou, but there was this Black scholar who said, you cannot dismantle the slave masters using their same tools. And for me, I was like, this is why I cannot use the same research methods that Eurocentric curriculums have given to us, because this will be completely against my desire and personal value system to decolonize curricula and to decolonize how research is done and presented. So I'm not going to use Eurocentric tools. I'm not going to use Eurocentric ways of presenting data. I'm not going to use Eurocentric ways of even engaging with research. I'm going to do it differently, because that same system is a system that almost took me out. And we can go into that.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot that you said there. One thing that I really loved about when you mentioned about how humanities subjects are seen as less than, and, you know, your science subjects are seen as, you know, the academic. And it's quite interesting that humanities is seen as less than, but yet it's the one subject, humanities, social sciences, that actually allows for humans to have interpretation, to have critical thinking, to give opinion, that allow for humans to be very, very, very creative, but yet they push maths and science, which is actually very objective, very black and white, very 1 + 1 is 2, no interpretation, only facts. But then could someone not say, though, with what you said around racism? Because I definitely agree in regards to there's clear institutional racism. Could the issue not be the fact that we as Black people are maybe just not filling up the roles to provide influence? Because you were in a position where you were in the Cambridge University, you were in a position where you had access to knowledge, and then you were able to implement with your research, right? Some people, maybe you're able to design curriculum, and if you're Black and you're in these positions, you're able to change the narrative. Could us focusing on the fact that, okay, yes, the system's racist, etc., could that also not limit us to just actually, as Black people, not just positioning ourselves into these roles? Because if Black people can be positioned into these senior leadership roles, into these roles of reforming, advocacy, like you said, that's how we're going to change the narrative. If not, you can't expect a white person to do that. What do you think?
I think that what people don't often realize is that, and for myself also, this was first-hand experience, is that I wasn't just at Cambridge University, I survived Cambridge University. And so what happens, sometimes we can think, well, maybe we just need more people who look like us to come in, and more people who look like us to be part of those roles. Oftentimes these roles are not often made for people who look like us. There's something which is called the invisible curriculum. And the
hidden curriculum. Is it the same as the hidden?
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, I spoke about
the hidden curriculum is exactly the same as the invisible curriculum. And it's the encompassing of all of the lessons and values and social norms that are absorbed in the education system, which are not necessarily seen, right? Through, hey, this is your written curriculum of what your books you're going to be learning this year. And so when I was at Cambridge University, what I haven't spoken about was that I almost dropped out. I was crying. I was locked in my room because I was punched on campus. I was racistly abused by a staff member who swore at me and who told me that if I reported him, it would be his word against mine, because he works in the institution and he's got people on the inside who could basically take me down. On top of that, Cambridge University's Chancellor actually confessed in a BBC documentary that Cambridge is a racist university. And with that, I also experienced unconscious bias and so many different incidents that contributed to microaggressions whilst I was in Cambridge. This led to me turning to my faith, not just as a, extra part of my life like so many other people may experience, but my faith became my lifeline because of my lived reality. And so many people who look like me, who I was speaking to around campus, were also hiding in their dorms. Now, this is not the story for every single Black person. However, a lot of the roles we're talking about, and even to get through an educational course can be somebody fighting for their life versus a white peer who doesn't necessarily have those invisible barriers that their peers are going through, like I was going through. And so it can be really difficult. Sometimes some people, they don't have the burden for the fights. And the truth is, it's not every single person who needs to be doing justice. You know, just their mere presence is advocacy in itself. I do feel like in response to what you were saying within, you know, African countries that you have been in and how you've seen the curriculum. And I've also done some work across Ghana with schools as well, is that if you're not taught to value your culture and you are taught that your culture is degenerate, that your race is degenerate, how on earth can the same people who have for hundreds of years been told that they are inferior suddenly see a value to their culture, especially if that is not something that the government is really pushing and really, really empowering? If the government who governs and leads a nation and its systems is pointing to other nations, white nations and Western nations, okay, ultimately, people are going to look and say, well, these are our saviors. These are the ones who are doing it well. We've got it. We're going to do it. And this is what we're seeing. And I think also, as a last point, one thing I would say is that when I was in school, value was never even put on being a good person, a better person, a moral person, a contributor, a societal inspiration. Everything was about grades, 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 grades. So there's that other layer of pressure, which is get your education, get your education. If you don't have an education, you're nothing in life. So it was very much, you know, I was looking at education as a ticket to, as opposed to a development that could work through me to make me someone who could contribute to something, who could be a contributor to society. And I believe that as time went on, I understood that, but that was much later down the line.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think that's one of the things that is my grievances. One of the things that I think schools do really struggle with is how to actually embed values into young people. I feel that schools put these values, they say that these are my school values. They have respect, they always have integrity, excellence, and something else. But when it comes down to actually modeling that for the students and the students actually understand, how do I embody respect? It comes right from the moment they enter the building. They should see respect oozing from even just the teacher and student relationship, the teacher to teacher relationship, you know, and it's a shame. And I think that that's something that I think schools do really struggle with, and something that I'm pretty passionate about, on how to actually embed that so every teacher really embodies that. Because you're right, education should actually be transformational. It should actually transform life chances. It should actually transform beings. But we don't really see that. We just almost see a self-fulfilling prophecy of what has been predetermined by their social class or by their race. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big thing. I think, obviously, you know, you've told me about the Cambridge story before. And obviously for those listening, this will be the first time that they've heard, you know, basically, you know, racial abuse that you had, physical abuse that you had, mental abuse that you had. Obviously, being up close and personal, I'm aware of that. And it always shocks me when you do remind me of what you kind of went through. But it's interesting that even despite going through that, you were able to not only finish Cambridge, but one could say succeed. One could say, actually, you know, you were successful. You did well. And I know that you've already accredited a lot of that to your faith. But what would also be interesting to look at, as I'm about to key into the next major question, is looking at, you know, maybe there was some things, some equipping that has been done unconsciously or consciously from schooling at your young age that might have even prepared you somewhat to stand strong in that time of adversity in Cambridge. So I do want us to go right back to when you were in primary, secondary, early secondary. Can you just kind of share with us the type of child you were? Because you've kind of given us this advocate, you're a strong woman, you're ready to, you know, fight for justice. You're ready to fight for people. You're ready to fight for the right thing. Were you always like that? Tell us the type of person you were when you were younger, the type of character you were when you were younger, and then the type of school that you went to when you were younger.
For me, school didn't contribute to that. I would say that it was my mum. Honestly, school is so lousy these days. The school that I went to pretty much contributed to lack of confidence, discouragement. I remember when I did a mock test at school, and I think I got a U. And my teacher just looked at me and they said, you're probably at best going to get like a C, or whatever. Like, no faith in me whatsoever. And I ended up getting the highest grade in the whole math set. I ended up getting an A-star. It was just like, she was so shocked. And she was so shocked that shock, for me, it didn't speak for her. It spoke for the system.
Yeah.
The system that I was in. And that was school for me. I went to a school where I was the only black child in my year when I was in primary school. I always was really bright and my mum really pushed me, Danielle. So it was like, I may be at school, but when I come home from school as a young person, really young, my mum would get me to write out a diary entry of everything that I did at school that day and then read it out to her when she got home. Not only did that contribute to my comprehension of my surroundings and my day, it really pushed me to have to be somebody who actually was observant and had to sit back and reflect and think about her life and think about her day as a young child. My mum was constantly pushing me in education. I don't remember a time where I didn't have a tutor. I would constantly be doing something on top of school to contribute to me doing well in school. And I know for a fact that it was my tuition that helped me to see maths or education a different way. It wasn't about me not being good at maths. It was that I didn't have a teacher who could help me see maths in a different way. Yeah. So when I did my GCSE, it was a breeze. So my mother was a really important and necessary part. If I wasn't being tutored, she was tutoring me. And if I had an assignment, deadline or anything, my mum would sit with me all night and she would stay up with me until she fell asleep on the sofa just to make me have company. She was always pushing me on. So I really, really am grateful for my mother. And this highlights the point of, I don't believe that education was only meant to be put on the government shoulders. Education was never meant to be, the formation of your education was not meant to just be in a school setting. Education was always meant to be intrinsically connected to family and to how you're being raised. That literally developed me into the fighter you see today that never gives up, the passionate education activist who enjoys education because my mum loved that. And gave that to me. That was a gift from her. And I would literally finally say that it was through family that I also valued education, because school did not make me value education. School made me value grades. My family made me value an education.
Yeah. The concept of education. If you're enjoying this conversation so far, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to comment your thoughts below and please subscribe. And don't forget to click that notification bell so that you're reminded every single Thursday for a new upload. Can you just take us back a little bit to when you said about having a lack of encouragement and discouragement, teacher looking down at you? Can you tell me, if you can go back to that moment, do you remember how that made you feel? And then where was the transition where it was like, okay, I'm going to work hard? Because you see, some people have the same experience that you had, but yet they don't get the A-star. That completely discombobulates them. And they are like, oh, okay, well, then there's no point trying. Right. Okay, well, I'm a failure. and they go the complete opposite way. Do you remember how, one, that made you feel as a young person? And then where was that switch, if you remember at all?
You know what? When teachers, it's so funny because the school that I was at is now recently inviting me to come back and give a talk, which is crazy because
Look at that.
I think, I know, it's like a 180. And I think it's because the systems at the school set me up to make me feel like I wasn't good enough. So for example, I was at a grammar school, highly competitive already. I was in the top 10% of the country. And it was very much like, exclusive treatment for the top set people and a real, I would say, patronizing teaching that I experienced from the bottom set. And then on top of that, I would say that they had this thing where they had Oxbridge training and they selected only a few amount of people that they believe were Oxbridge level. And I was never selected for that. I was never selected for that. However, what I can say is the turning points was that all of this worked towards pushing me to be successful. Every time I've been underestimated, every time I've been looked down upon, every time I've been seen as this little girl, this has always been a gift to me because it has almost produced this righteous indignation on the inside of me that, hey, I'm just going to prove you wrong. Do you see what I mean? And so I'm smiling because me predict you're going to get a U or a C led to an A star. Me being seen as, we don't think she's going to go to Oxbridge led to me ended up going to Cambridge University and most likely going on to do my PhD. Like every stepping stone of doubt that came my way contributed to me wanting to be better. And the way I see it is that some of the most successful entrepreneurs, they were terrible in school. What does that teach you about the system? What does that teach you about the system? And it just provoked me to prove, actually, number one, I could prove to myself I could do it.
Yeah.
And I did.
I love it. Yes. You have to, because do you know what? Your story, this situation is so similar to what happened to me when I was in school. And there's research. In 1992, there was a study by Heidi Mirza. And Heidi Mirza basically did a study on Black girls and how they respond with teachers who have low expectations on them, teachers who are racist and label them. And literally over 90% of the Black girls responded with the negative labels by working 10 times harder, by proving them wrong in every way, shape or form. And it's funny because that's why shout out to your mom, honestly, shout out to your mom, because I do think that mums for daughters have such a big role in this particular, because I mean, a lot of people have heard my story in regards to similar situation. I was studying economics. I was probably getting C's, so I wasn't doing as well. I was the only girl as well in the whole class, and then the only Black person in the class. And then I would never forget applying for universities. In the UK, we applied for 5 universities, and my economics teacher, I don't know her business. I don't know why she felt the need to check what universities I'm applying to, but she did. And she pulled me over and said, I saw the universities that you're applying to. I think you need to be really realistic, my dear. She went to go and get a book, scrolled all the way down, that like, it was almost like it's ranking a order that ranks universities, scrolled all the way down and said, right, you need to come more down here. This is where people like you would realistically get to. Okay. I just want to be honest with you.
I didn't know the story.
And I was in economics. I was literally in year 12. And I remember just being like, when I tell you, I felt like all my dreams and I just felt like everything shattered. I wanted to go to the University of Manchester. That's a Russell Group uni. And you're telling me that it's actually impossible and I need to be more realistic. I'm being very too idealistic. I'm putting my expectations way too high for someone like myself. And I remember going back to the toilet and just crying and calling my mum. And similar, I told my mum what the teacher said to me. And she was like, wait, hold up. She said, do you want to go to University of Manchester? I said, yes, but we need to be realistic. The teacher said I need to be realistic. She goes, no. If you want to, you're going to work hard and
Come
by
on.
God's grace, you're going to get in. And I was just like, oh, okay. And I literally just took her words and was like, oh, okay. And I went back in, focused. And as you know, I went to University of Manchester. And I think that shows the power of mothers, but not even just mothers, because we were fortunate enough to call our mothers in time of need. But your guardian, it's whoever is your guardian, whoever is your mentor, whoever is a figure in your life. This is the importance of that role. Like you said, you went to a grammar school, you went to quite a toxic environment, one would say, but you had a mum that was able to, every time you're going back home, she's whipping you up in shape. She's getting you ready for the next exam. She's getting you ready for a lot of people don't have that. And this is the problem. When people don't have your mum, my mum, or, parents or guardians that are going to keep, be able to afford the tuition, be able to, get them to, like, the fact that I'm taking that for my children, by the way. I've written that down to get my child to go to school and write up everything. That is fantastic. Like, that is literally comprehension, critical thinking. So many skills that your mum has gotten you to literally practice by just telling you, go to school and write up everything, and then not just write it, which a lot of us do. We stop at the writing and then we read it. No, you're going to read it back to me. Like, that is gold.
I present
a lot
it
of people
everything.
Don't have that. Yeah, exactly. Like, look at you. And then you'll be so much more confident. When your school says we need someone to present, you're going to be, oh, I do that with my mum all the time. Oh, I do that at home all the time. Oh, I do that at church all the time. That's why we all have such a bigger role. But it also shows that even though, yes, parents that are listening to this and parents-to-be that are listening to this shows it, I'm hoping it's encouraging you and inspiring you and giving you those gems to take. But those children who don't have parents like that, who don't come from systems like this, they rely on the school. They rely on everything. The school has the bigger influence. And if the school teachers are bringing that discouragement and looking down on them and telling them to be realistic, oh my gosh, I don't know who is advocating for them.
Wow, that is so good. I was even gonna mention, there was one thing that I forgot, and it was really important. And it was, this was it. One of the things that people don't also speak about is sometimes it's not the teachers, it's also what the students are trying to teach you too. And when I was at school, a lot of the students wanted to look like they weren't revising and they weren't trying, and they were just naturally getting like the best grades. I don't know what it was or why this was a thing, but it was like, everyone needs to not think that I'm doing anything. I'm partying, I'm going out, I'm going here, I'm going here. And I'm just like gonna get the best grades ever. And this was literally, and I didn't realize that this was actually what was going on until I think it was GCSEs. That's when I really began to realize that a lot of the people who had been pretending that they were naturally smart and did nothing were the very ones who were sitting there doing the most behind the scenes. Yeah. And I had to really quickly learn as well that I cannot look to my left or to my right with my education either. I have to focus on me and where I want to get to. And I have to look, and I need to double down and decide how much effort do I need to be put in to get to where I need to be. And that's what I did. And it was great. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing because I said, you ain't telling me what you doing. Let me just focus on me. And people were shocked when I did well.
Yeah. Do you know what? That is probably one of the biggest mistakes actually that young people make, is that they look too much around. They're comparing themselves with other people and they're thinking, oh, okay, well, all my mates aren't, or why am I, or why do I need to? And actually, honestly, and what you've just said is gold, because I remember interviewing Jerry Shonday. If you guys haven't seen that interview, go and watch that interview on The Education Effect. He spoke about how, he would be playing kiki kaka, with everybody, but best believe when it was time to do work, he would do every single past paper that ever existed since 1992. That
was literally me, like to the point that I had an English literature exam and I memorized over 104 quotes from the book. I would be revising for 10 to 12 hours a day.
Damn.
It got to the point my mum had to carry me from the table to literally say to me, no, you need to go to sleep, because she couldn't believe how hard I was working.
What
And that was
age were
like,
you? Like, what level was that?
This was when I really started pushing when I was like 16. And I think this mentality has been what has made me such a, like, I am able to really push through things. And this is what helped me to also get through Cambridge as well. This is what's helped me to, just continue to really, the path that I've taken and the impact that I've had was not because I got high grades at school. It was because of the level of focus and the level of drive that I had for success.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know what? There's something that you said about when you were revising for 10, 12 hours. Because I wanted to find out when that was, because I do feel like I wonder how we get young people to really take this seriously, because I feel like that 16 is usually the twitch, like it's usually the click. For me, when I was 16, similar situation. When I went to A-levels, just before A-levels, there was a group of my friends that were ahead of me. They were 2 years above me, and about 4 of them repeated their A-levels in year 12. And I was like, whoa, like I was like in year 10, and I was like, wait, you repeated year 12, like all of you. So I thought A-levels must be really hard. Okay, I need to buckle down. So when it came to sixth form, I was literally revising from the beginning. I taught myself majority of the A-level content. It was me, the textbook and the library all the time, and prayers continuously to God to help me. I was literally teaching myself, revising over, and I found that I was able to absorb the knowledge a lot more than in class. Was, when somebody got 10 out of 10 in a test. And I remember this was probably the best thing that the teacher's ever done in that whole year that she taught me, or 2 years that she taught me. She photocopied a student's answer that got full marks, and we were able to just deconstruct it. And from then, I then understood, oh, this is the template. Oh, I'm just going to use this for every single essay you give me. I'm going to use this template. I'm going to get into this student's head and just see how she wrote that and literally master it for the next papers. And I got full marks.
Wow.
In my education module in sociology in A-level.
Wow.
Yeah. And I really think that when you're 16, obviously it was a great time for us, for you as well. When you turn 16, it's probably the best time to really take life seriously. I'm not going to lie, because it's the biggest impact in secondary school.
People didn't realize what other people were doing. I never told people when I was getting extra tuition that I was getting extra tuition. It just didn't come to my mind. And also as I got older, I just thought to myself, this is my cutting edge and I'm not going to share that secret. So people didn't know.
Okay, but let's pull that. Why did you feel that?
It was culture of my school, which was don't try so hard. You don't need to try hard. And so because of that, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to tell people that I'm getting tuition. They'll be like, oh, is that because you're stupid? That's how they thought. And that's how they talked. So for me, it was just like, I'm just going to do this and I'm not going to, I'm not going to embarrass myself and share that I'm doing tuition and all of these things. Like, I'm not going to do that. And so it helped me so much. What I do think is really like crazy is the fact that, for a lot of us, including myself, we did like look at what the mark scheme was, all these types of stuff.
Yeah.
And like, as much as that helped us, because listen, we got to live, we got to get into these universities, we've got to grind, we have got to be successful. Unfortunately, that's what education's been reduced to, memorize a mark scheme. Like it just hadn't, I do not recall my education ever dealing with my heart. I think everyone used to have this subject, PSHE.
Yeah, that's what I teach. And it's literally back then, nothing. Back then, I mean, now it's so much better, but back then, oh yeah. They've changed it a lot. Because back then, it was a joke subject, a joke of a subject.
It was, everyone's just sitting there like, PHSE, chilling out, nothing. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was such a golden opportunity to teach people about education, values, who we want to become. Like, it was such a waste of space back then, you know, and that's my grief for like education as a whole. Like, what are we doing to show people values? What are we showing to how to treat people well, how to not, you know, hurt people? The amount of rising narcissists and like crimes and all these things that we have. Why education not educating people on actually how to be a law-abiding citizen? And that's where they've let us down, because we've got people, including myself, who are memorizing mark schemes, but we don't even know how to, as you say, show respect and actually be the person that we need to be.
Do you know what? I love the fact that you even mentioned about PSHE, because I qualified as a teacher, as a citizenship teacher, and part of that is you teach PSHE. And even soon, I've taken up a lot of roles where I get to head and design the curriculum of PSHE. And I actually think that PSHE, like you said, is a goldmine. I believe that if schools take PSHE so much more serious, they will realize a lot of their issues can be, I'm not saying that PSHE is going to be the solution, but PSHE can mold a lot of students in the right way when they're in year 11 and year 10. But then it goes back to what you spoke about earlier, is who is leading these subjects? Because, you know, right now, PSHE is also a way that people can push their own agenda as well. Because PSHCE, you know, you have a lot of sex education, you have a lot of LGBTQIA+, you have a lot of all sorts of things. You have crime, you have radicalization, then there's a bit of religion in there. So people who have agendas can push their own narratives of what they want. But I do think, though, that schools in general do need to take that subject far more seriously, and not become a joke subject where school students come in. Because I'm not gonna lie, PSHE for me, when I was a student, similar to you, it was literally like the lesson that we go to chill. We're just gonna munch sweets and chat about what happened on the playground during the next lesson. But certain other lessons, you can't do that. Do you know?
You can't. Yeah. That's so funny.
This has been such a good conversation. Like, I'm so glad to have had you on. Like, I know that me and you, we can go on forever, literally. But I know that there's so much gems that you shared with us. You know, whether it was directly to young people, whether it was teachers, educators, or even just the normal professional, you know, reflecting back. Hopefully you've listened and you're trying to reflect back on your own, you know, your own school and whether that brought success. I love the fact that, you know, your mum had a big part to play on your success and equipping you. And I know that you say school didn't, but what I want to ask as well, though, is could you not say that the adversity that you experienced in school, I'm not saying that everyone needs to experience this to then, but could you not say that the adversity that you experienced, you know, just all of that experience essentially of, you know, discouragement and almost having to prove yourself, do you not think that some of that may have contributed indirectly to you and who you are today, or how you've been able to overcome certain hurdles? Or would you still say no?
I think that was what I was going to initially go for, but then I was like, that shouldn't even be like
I know.
Something
I know.
that
We don't want
I
to encourage
say,
it.
'cause, like, it's not like they're directly helping me in any way. No, they were trying to hinder me. And truthfully, I decided that it would help me, not them. If you see what I mean.
Good.
You know, that was my decision, because there's a lot of people who have experienced the same thing as me and it hasn't turned out the same way. They have become a statistic, you know? And so, for me, it's just, I can't say that, you know, school did this and school did that. Because I didn't. I can say that I'm grateful for what school contributed to in terms of the extracurricular activities and those things that gave me levels of confidence or nurtured the confidence that was already in me. But I wouldn't say that because of the adversity, you know, thank you, that I helped myself. I decided I was going to use that to help me. And I think I've taken that with every aspect of my life. Like, even despite how someone treats me or how people are, you know what? I am going to use whatever you try to do to harm me. I'll turn it around for good, because that's what God does, you know, through those who love him. Yeah, he'll do it.
Do you know what? I love what you've just said. And I think actually there's what you're saying in forefront, which is, you know, not trying to use adversity as a way to be the school of thought. And, you know, we need to be more intentional on how we help young people to really take ownership of their future and what they're doing, and get them to understand that, yes, right now, yes, you're coming to school. Yes, you're just being told what to do and you're just kind of almost absorbing everything. But you're going to leave here and it's going to be you and the world, basically. And actually life isn't fair. And getting them to actually take ownership of that and helping them realize that when things are bad that happen to you, that you cannot control, how are you going to respond to it? Are you going to respond and say, you know what, I'm going to turn this around for good? You know, or are you going to use that as an excuse to stay where you are? And I think maybe as educators and leaders, we can do more in conditioning that mindset, because that is a mindset. Because you look at something, you know, it's just like how someone will look at something like lemons and say, I can produce lemonade. And some people will just look at lemons and be like, what the hell? I don't want lemons. Give me oranges. So it's like, you know, everything is about perspective and how we view things, essentially. So what is one thing that you would want, you know, a young person, I think, actually listening to take away from this conversation, if it's just one thing?
You are in charge of shaping your future more than the world and school system makes you believe. I really think that's so necessary for them to know. When I was younger, I thought that there was a cookie cutter approach and journey that I had to be on to get to where I wanted to be. And when I didn't see that necessarily happening, I disqualified myself, but then I saw how I was rerouted to actually accomplish the things I did want to see in my life. I think sometimes we're expecting, you know, certain things to go a certain way or to be handed to us in a particular way. And so to the young person listening to this, listen, you can try 5 times. Even if they reject you 6, you can still apply again. And for the other young person listening to this, if they won't give you a seat at the table, get out your materials and build your own table, my friend.
Yeah.
Build it yourself. When people haven't given me platforms, them myself. When people didn't give me an opportunity, I made my own opportunity. When people don't invite you to a specific group or they don't see your gifts, as long as you do and you just keep pushing, you will see the result at the end. That is how it works. That's how it's done. And that is actually what leads to success.
I love that. I love that. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Nia-Cerise. It's been such a pleasure having you on The Education Effect. If you enjoyed this conversation, then do not forget to subscribe. Join the Education Effect family, and I can't wait to see you with my next guest.